Welcome to Myth and Moonlight, where we journey together into the realm of peaceful slumber. I'm your host Elara, and tonight I'll be your guide as we drift into a world of gentle magic and timeless wonder. As I was preparing for tonight's story, I found myself reflecting on how time seems to flow differently when we're between wakefulness and sleep. Those moments when the mind begins to wander freely, untethered from the constraints of our daily schedules, is a special kind of magic, isn't it? The way we can travel anywhere in our minds just before sleep embraces us. Tonight, we'll embark on a journey alongside a young apprentice to a master wizard. Together, we'll wander through the fascinating constructs of time itself, exploring the delicate threads that weave together our past, present and future. As we travel with our apprentice, we'll discover that sometimes the greatest magic lies not in grand spells and dramatic transformations, but in the quiet moments of awareness and gentle understanding. This journey carries with it a subtle truth about our own lives, how we are both travellers through time and creators of our own experience. As you listen, allow yourself to absorb this wisdom, not through effort or analysis, but through the simple act of being present with the story. So find a comfortable position now, wherever you are. Perhaps you're already nestled in your bed, or maybe you're settling into a favourite chair. Wherever you've chosen to rest, know that you're exactly where you need to be as we begin our journey into sleep. As you prepare to join me on this gentle adventure, I invite you to begin releasing the events of your day. Each of us carries the weight of countless moments, decisions, and interactions as we move through our waking hours. Like our apprentice who must learn to navigate the currents of time, we too must learn when to hold on and when to let go. Think for a moment about your own relationship with time, the way minutes can stretch into hours when we're waiting for something important, or how years can seem to pass in the blink of an eye when we look back on cherished memories. We all experience those moments when time seems malleable, shifting and flowing around us like water in a stream. Tonight's journey will take us deeper into that sensation, into a place where time becomes something we can explore with curiosity and wonder, rather than something that constrains us. Now, let's begin to relax your body, preparing it for rest, while your mind gently drifts with our story. Start by bringing your awareness to the top of your head, noticing any tension you might be holding there. Perhaps there's tightness across your scalp or around your temples. Simply acknowledge whatever sensations are present, and with your next exhale, allow that area to soften and release. Move your attention down to your forehead and eyebrows. Many of us carry stress here without realizing it. Gently smooth out any wrinkles or furrows, letting your forehead become broad and smooth. Allow your eyebrows to relax away from each other, creating a sense of spaciousness around your eyes. Now, focus on your eyes themselves. Let them rest easily in their sockets, the muscles around them becoming soft and heavy. Your eyelids can grow weighted and comfortable, neither forcing them closed nor straining to keep them open, just allowing them to rest naturally. Bring your awareness to your jaw, another common place for tension to accumulate. Let your lower jaw become heavy, allowing a small space between your upper and lower teeth. Your tongue can rest comfortably in the bottom of your mouth, and your lips can be soft and slightly parted. Continue moving down to your neck and shoulders. Imagine any tightness here melting away like snow in warm sunshine. Your shoulders can drop away from your ears, settling into a position of complete comfort. Feel the weight of your shoulders being fully supported by whatever your upper arms, elbows, forearms, wrists, and finally your hands and fingers. Your arms can be heavy and warm, perfectly supported, and completely at rest. Bring awareness to your back from the base of your skull all the way down to your tailbone. Notice any areas of discomfort or tension, and with each exhale, allow those sensations to soften and release. Your spine can find its natural curves, neither too arched nor too flat, just perfectly aligned for comfort. Continue down to your hips and pelvis, allowing this area to feel heavy and supported. Any tension in your hip joints or across your pelvis can melt away now, creating a sensation of being grounded and secure. Now focus on your legs, from the tops of your thighs, down through your knees, calves, ankles, feet and toes. Let any remaining tension dissolve, leaving your legs feeling warm, heavy and completely at ease. Your feet might begin to feel slightly warm or even pleasantly tingly as circulation improves with this deep relaxation. Take a moment to scan your entire body now, noticing the pleasant sensation of being fully supported. Wherever you still feel any holding or tension, you can give those areas permission to relax even more deeply with each breath. Now, let's bring some gentle awareness to your breathing. There's no need to change anything about how you're breathing right now. Simply observe the natural rhythm of your inhales and exhales. Notice the cool sensation as air enters through your nose or mouth, and the warmer feeling as it leaves your body. Feel how your abdomen gently rises as you inhale, creating space for your lungs to expand, and then how it softly falls as you exhale, releasing any tension with each outgoing breath. This natural cycle has been with you since your first moments and will remain your faithful companion throughout all your days. As you continue breathing easily and naturally, you might notice that your inhales become slightly deeper and your exhales grow a bit longer. This happens naturally as your body relaxes more completely. Simply allow this process to unfold without effort or control. With each exhale, you might silently say to yourself, releasing, softening, letting go. These words can become a gentle mantra, helping your mind to synchronize with the relaxation of your body. Now, as your body continues to rest deeply, I invite you to begin creating an inner landscape, a peaceful setting where our story can unfold. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of an ancient forest. The trees here are immensely tall, their trunks wider than a person could encircle with their arms. Their bark is deeply furrowed and coloured in rich browns and subtle greys. High above, their branches create a living canopy with leaves in varying shades of emerald, jade and forest green. The light here has a special quality, golden and honeyed as it filters through the leaves, creating pools of warmth on the forest floor. You can see particles of dust and tiny seeds floating lazily in these beams of light, spiraling slowly in gentle air currents. The forest floor beneath your feet is soft and yielding, covered with a thick carpet of moss in various shades of green. Here and there, tiny wildflowers peek through, small stars of white, purple and yellow nestled among the verdant cushion. All around you, the forest is alive with gentle, soothing sounds. The distant call of birds creates a peaceful backdrop, their songs echoing among the trees. A soft breeze moves through the upper branches, creating a gentle rushing sound, like waves on a distant shore. Closer by, you might hear the delicate bubbling of a small sensations of your body in this environment. The air is perfectly comfortable, neither too warm nor too cool, and carries a slight moisture that feels refreshing against your skin. The dappled sunlight brings a pleasant warmth wherever it touches you. The ground beneath your feet provides perfect support, firm enough to stand upon with confidence, yet soft enough to cushion each step. As you shift your weight slightly, you can feel the moss compressing gently beneath you, then slowly expanding back when released. A soft breeze occasionally caresses your face and arms, bringing with it the fresh scents of the forest. It's like a gentle touch, reminding you of the living presence of this place. Your body feels light and comfortable here, as though you belong in this setting. The forest carries a symphony of scents that awaken something deep and primal within you. The predominant aroma is that of rich earth and growing things, the smell of life itself, complex and nurturing. Underneath that is the clean, sharp scent of pine and the subtler fragrance of various barks and leaves. When you breathe deeply, you might detect hints of wildflowers, sweet and delicate, or the refreshing note of mint growing near the stream. There's also the distinctive scent of sun-warmed stone and the faint mushroom-like perfume of fallen logs slowly returning to the earth. If you part your lips slightly, you might even taste the forest on your tongue, a sweetness in the air, like diluted honey or fresh sap. The air itself seems to nourish you with each breath, filling you with vitality and peace simultaneously. This forest exists in a place beyond ordinary time and space. It represents the threshold between our everyday world and the realm of dreams and possibilities. Like our apprentice who will learn to navigate between different time streams, this forest stands between what is fixed and what remains fluid and changeable. In many wisdom traditions across cultures, forests symbolize the unconscious mind, vast, mysterious, and filled with untapped potential. As we venture into this particular forest tonight, we're also journeying into the deeper parts of ourselves, the places where magic and transformation become possible. The path that winds through these trees represents our life's journey, sometimes clearly marked, other times faint and requiring intuition to follow. The trees themselves embody steadfastness and patience, growing slowly through decades and centuries, their rings recording the passage of time in their very bodies. As you prepare to follow our apprentice along this forest path, know that the journey ahead contains gentle lessons about patience, presence, and the nature of time itself. These insights don't need to be grasped or analysed. They will naturally integrate themselves into your understanding as you rest and listen. Know that it's perfectly acceptable to drift in and out of conscious awareness as our story unfolds. Your deeper mind will absorb what it needs, even as your conscious attention ebbs and flows. You can allow yourself to simply experience the journey without effort, without striving to remember or understand everything. Give yourself permission to wander with our apprentice, to get lost in the details of our story, or to float on the sound of my voice without following every word. However you experience this journey is exactly right for you. And now, with your body deeply relaxed and your mind receptive to the gentle magic of story, let's begin our journey with the wizard's apprentice as they learn to navigate the mysterious constructs of time. In the quietest corner of the ancient forest known as Elderwood stood a curious structure that few ever noticed. It wasn't exactly a cottage, though it had walls and a roof, nor was it precisely a tower, though it rose higher than the surrounding trees in certain lights and from particular angles. Its architecture seemed to shift subtly when observed for too long, as though the building itself couldn't quite decide what form it wished to take. This was the dwelling of the Timekeeper, a wizard so old that even the eldest trees in Elderwood were saplings when he first arrived. His true name had been forgotten centuries ago, lost to the very force he had dedicated his life to understanding. Most who sought his wisdom simply called him Master Kronos, though he often chuckled at this formal address. And within this curious dwelling lived Thea, the Timekeeper's apprentice. She had come to Master Kronos 7 seasons ago, arriving on his doorstep during a summer thunderstorm. She couldn't have been more than 12 winters old then, soaked to the skin and clutching a letter of introduction from a wizard in a distant city. The letter explained that the child had an unusual sensitivity to temporal energies. She could feel the passage of time in ways others couldn't, sensing its ebbs and flows like a sailor might feel changes in the wind. Thea had grown considerably in those 7 years, both in height and in wisdom. Now 19, she had a thoughtful face with eyes the colour of forest moss, deep green with flecks of gold. Her hair was the rich brown of oak bark, usually tied back with a simple leather cord while she worked. She dressed practically in tunics and leggings of natural colours, browns, greens, and the occasional deep blue that reminded Master Kronos of the midnight sky. Most striking about Thea was the quality of her movements, deliberate and measured, as though she were constantly aware of time passing around her. She never rushed, yet was never late. Even her speech had a measured cadence that invited listeners to slow down and truly hear her words. On this particular morning, Thea was in the workshop portion of their curious dwelling, carefully grinding dried herbs into fine powder. Sunlight streamed through a high window, illuminating motes of dust that danced in the air around her like tiny stars. The mortar she used was carved from a single piece of white marble, worn smooth from centuries of use. The pestle was of the same material, fitting perfectly in her palm, as though made specifically for her hand. The workshop itself was a marvel of organised chaos. Shelves lined every available wall, holding hundreds of glass jars and bottles in various shapes and sizes. Some contained powders in every colour imaginable. Others held liquids that seemed to glow from within, and still others housed curious objects suspended in clear solutions. Feathers that continuously molted and regrew, leaves that changed through seasonal colours in the span of minutes, and tiny hourglasses where the sand flowed upward instead of down. Several workbenches occupied the centre of the room, their wooden surfaces stained and marked from years of alchemical accidents and successful experiments alike. Brass instruments of puzzling design hung from hooks on the ceiling, devices for measuring angles of starlight, the pressure of moonbeams, and the density of fog collected at specific hours. Most impressive was the great clock that dominated the eastern wall. Unlike ordinary timepieces, this clock had multiple faces showing different times, and numerous hands, some moving forward at various speeds, others moving backward, and a few that remained stubbornly still. The clock never needed winding, and its soft ticking filled the workshop with a soothing rhythm that seemed to keep perfect time with Thea's heartbeat. The scent of the workshop was a complex blend of aromas, the sharpness of dried herbs, the earthiness of mineral powders, the tang of metal implements, and the faint sweetness of the beeswax candles that provided light during evening hours. Underneath all these was the distinctive scent of old books and parchment from the library that adjoined the As Thea worked, she became aware of a subtle change in the workshop's atmosphere. The quality of light seemed to shift, becoming slightly more golden, and the ticking of the great clock slowed almost imperceptibly. These were familiar signs that Master Kronos was returning from one of his temporal journeys. Sure enough, the air in the centre of the room began to ripple, like the surface of a pond disturbed by a falling leaf. The ripples expanded outward, creating a circular distortion about the height of a tall man. Within this distortion, a figure gradually materialized, first as a shadow, then gaining color and substance until Master Kronos stood fully present in the workshop. The Timekeeper did not look as one might expect a powerful wizard to appear. He was neither particularly tall nor imposingly built. His face, weathered by uncountable years, had the gentle expressiveness of someone who smiled often and laughed easily. His beard was not long and flowing, but rather neatly trimmed, more salt than pepper, as was the hair on his head. His attire was similarly understated, simple robes of deep blue fabric with subtle silver embroidery along the hems. These were not the ostentatious garments that many wizards favoured to impress their audience, but practical clothing designed for comfort during long hours of study and experimentation. The only truly remarkable aspect of his appearance was his eyes. They were a clear, piercing blue that seemed to hold depths beyond ordinary human experience. Those who met his gaze often reported feeling as though they were looking into the sky of another world entirely, vast, ancient, and filled with mysteries beyond comprehension. "Good morning, Thea," he said, his voice warm and slightly rough, like stones polished in a river. "Or is it afternoon already? The light in the Mesozoic era always leaves my internal clock a bit confused." Thea smiled, setting aside her mortar and pestle. "It's just past mid-morning, Master. You've been gone 3 days this time." Master Kronos raised his eyebrows in mild surprise. "Only 3? It felt longer from my perspective. Time flows differently in the deep past, especially around large reptiles." He chuckled, moving to a wooden chair near Thea's workbench and lowering himself into it with a contented sigh. "What have you been working on in my absence?" "The memory preservation powder for Madame Willow in the village," Thea replied, indicating the fine silvery dust in her mortar. "Her granddaughter's wedding is tomorrow, and she wants to ensure she remembers every detail with perfect clarity." "Ah, excellent. The essence of moonflower and powdered quartz crystal." "Yes, with a pinch of crushed butterfly wing freely given, and 3 drops of morning dew collected at the exact moment of sunrise." The Timekeeper nodded approvingly. "Perfect. The butterfly wing is especially important. It carries the imprint of transformation and the memory of caterpillar life." Thea carefully transferred the powder into a small glass vial, corking it and sealing it with a drop of blue wax. She placed it in a wooden box lined with soft cloth, ready for delivery to the village later that day. As she worked, she noticed Master Kronos watching her with an unusual intensity. His normally jovial expression had taken on a more serious cast, his brow slightly furrowed. She had seen this look before. It typically preceded an important lesson or the revelation of a new aspect of temporal magic. "Is something troubling you, Master?" she asked, setting the box aside and giving him her full attention. Master Kronos was quiet for a moment, his fingers absently tracing a pattern on the wooden armrest of his chair. When he spoke, his voice was more measured than usual. "Thea, how long have you been my apprentice now?" 7 months and 16 days, she answered without hesitation, her innate sense of time providing the precise figure instantly. He smiled at her exactitude. Yes, of course. And in that time, you've mastered the basic principles of temporal theory, learned to craft dozens of time-sensitive potions and powders, and even begun to sense the delicate streams of time that flow around us constantly. Thanks to your guidance, Thea said respectfully. The Timekeeper waved away her deference with a gentle motion of his hand. You've done the work, child. I've merely pointed the way. He leaned forward slightly, his blue eyes focusing intently on her face. But there is an aspect of temporal magic that I've not yet taught you. Perhaps the most important aspect. I've been waiting until you were ready, both in skill and in wisdom. Thea felt a flutter of excitement in her chest. New knowledge was always thrilling, especially when Master Kronos deemed it significant enough to warrant such a serious introduction. What is it, Master? The direct manipulation of time streams, he said simply. The ability to not merely sense the flow of time, but to step into it, to navigate its currents, and even to alter its course when necessary. Thea's eyes widened. This was indeed a monumental revelation. Most people experience time as a linear progression, a river flowing in one direction only. Even among those who studied temporal magic, few ever developed the ability to move against that current or to step from one stream to another. You mean, time travel? She asked, using the common terminology, though she knew it was an oversimplification of the complex art Master Kronos practiced. He smiled slightly. In the most basic sense, yes. Though travel implies a journey from one fixed point to another, what I'm speaking of is more like becoming one with the river of time itself, sensing its depths, its currents, its hidden pools and rapids, and eventually learning to direct those currents in small, carefully considered ways. Thea felt a momentary flutter of uncertainty. The responsibility of such power was enormous. But you've always taught me that interfering with the natural flow of time is dangerous, that even small changes can have far-reaching consequences. Indeed, Master Kronos nodded approvingly, and that wisdom will serve you well as you learn this art. The greatest danger comes from those who would manipulate time without understanding or respecting its fundamental nature. He stood moving to the great clock on the wall. With gentle fingers, he touched one of the stationary hands, causing it to tremble slightly before resuming its stillness. Something has happened, Thea. Something that requires immediate attention. His voice had grown more serious. I've detected a disturbance in the temporal matrix. A significant one. It appears that someone has been tampering with a crucial nexus point in the past, creating ripples that are beginning to affect our present. What kind of disturbance? Thea asked, rising to join her master by the clock. Master Kronos gestured to the still hand he had touched. This chronometer is aligned with what we call a foundational time stream. A stream of events so significant that countless other realities depend upon its stability. For the past 3 days, it has been showing signs of deterioration. Now that he mentioned it, Thea could see what her master had noticed. The usually bright golden hand had dulled to a brassy hue, and tiny fracture lines were visible across its surface. More concerning was the faint tremor that ran through it, periodically, as though it was struggling to move against some unseen resistance. Who would do such a thing? And why? She asked, disturbed by the implications. The Timekeeper's expression darkened. not all who study the temporal arts share our philosophy of conservation and respect. There are those who see time as merely another force to be conquered and exploited for personal gain. He sighed deeply. I have suspicions about who might be responsible, but confirming them will be part of your task. My task, Thea echoed, a mixture of surprise and apprehension in her voice. Master Kronos turned to face her directly, his blue eyes now filled with a solemn intensity. Yes, Thea, I would not accelerate your training in this manner if the situation were not urgent. The disruption is significant enough that it requires immediate intervention, yet subtle enough that a delicate touch is needed. A small smile softened his expression. And no one I know has a lighter touch with temporal energies than you. Thea felt a complex mix of emotions: pride at her master's confidence, anxiety about the responsibility, and excitement at the prospect of finally learning these advanced techniques. But underneath all these was a steady determination. If a foundational time stream was truly in danger, then the consequences of inaction would be catastrophic. I'm ready, Master, she said, straightening her posture. Tell me what I need to do. Master Kronos nodded, pleased with her response. First, we must prepare you properly. Travelling through the constructs of time requires both physical and mental protection. He moved to a cabinet near his desk and removed a small wooden box inlaid with mother of pearl. Opening it, he revealed a pendant, a perfectly circular piece of clear crystal set in a frame of twisted silver wire. This is a Kronos anchor, he explained, lifting it carefully by its silver chain. It will help you maintain your connection to your origin point in the time stream. Without it, you might become lost, or, worse, begin to fade from existence as your temporal signature becomes diffused across multiple streams. He placed the pendant around Thea's neck. The crystal felt cool against her skin for a moment, then seemed to adjust to her body temperature until she barely noticed its presence. The anchor also serves another crucial function, Master Kronos continued. It will allow you to perceive disruptions in the time stream more clearly. Areas where tampering has occurred will appear distorted or discoloured when viewed through the crystal. Next, he retrieved a small leather pouch from a drawer in his desk. Opening it, he showed Thea its contents, a fine powder that shifted colours as it caught the light, sometimes appearing silver, sometimes gold, and occasionally taking on a blue-green hue like shallow ocean water. This is temporal sand, he explained, collected from the shores of the timeless sea, a place that exists between realities. A pinch of this, cast with proper intent, will open a pathway between time streams, but use it sparingly. Each grain represents a moment that can never be recovered once spent. He handed the pouch to Thea, who secured it carefully at her belt. What about the spell to restore the timeline? She asked. If someone has damaged a foundational stream, won't we need a way to repair it? Master Kronos' eyes crinkled with approval. An excellent question. The restoration of a damaged time stream isn't accomplished through a single spell, but rather through a process. He moved to one of the many bookshelves, running his finger along the spines until he found the volume he sought. A slim book bound in blue leather with silver symbols embossed on its cover. This contains the fundamental principles of temporal restoration, he said, placing it in her hands. Study it tonight. The techniques described within will allow you to identify the precise points of disruption and begin the healing process. physical heft of paper and binding, but the weight of the knowledge it contained. She placed it carefully in her satchel. "When will I depart?" she asked, already mentally preparing herself for the journey ahead. "Dawn tomorrow," the Timekeeper replied. "The transition between night and day creates a natural thinning between time streams. It will make your first passage easier." He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Then rest, prepare your mind and body. The journey through time's constructs can be disorienting for the uninitiated." Thea nodded, understanding the wisdom in his advice. She had seen Master Kronos return from his temporal journeys, sometimes exhilarated, other times exhausted, occasionally with a distant look in his eyes, as though part of him remained in another time entirely. "I'll be ready," she promised. That evening, as golden sunlight faded to dusty blue twilight, Thea sat cross-legged on the floor of her small bedchamber, the blue book open before her. The pages contained diagrams of swirling energies, mathematical equations that seemed to shift slightly when not observed directly, and text written in an ancient language that she had been studying for the past 3 years. As she read, the principles began to coalesce in her mind. How time streams were not truly linear, but spiral in nature, constantly turning back upon themselves in subtle ways. How each moment contained echoes of all possible variations, with certain probability pathways strengthened through the accumulated weight of decisions and events. Most importantly, she learned that repairing a damaged time stream wasn't about forcing it back into a predetermined shape, but rather about finding where its natural flow had been diverted and gently encouraging it to return to its original course. "Like guiding a stream back to its riverbed after a flood," she murmured to herself, understanding dawning. Not building a new channel, but finding the old one. The moon had risen high by the time she closed the book, her mind full of new concepts and techniques. She knew she should sleep, but excitement and nervous energy kept her wide awake. Instead, she moved to the window of her chamber, gazing out at the moonlit forest. Elderwood was beautiful at night. Silver moonlight filtered through the ancient branches, creating patterns of light and shadow on the forest floor. Occasionally, the soft glow of bioluminescent fungi added touches of ethereal blue to the scene. In the distance, she could hear the gentle hooting of an owl and the rustle of nocturnal creatures moving through the underbrush. This was home, the only true home she had known since leaving her birth village all those years ago. The thought that a disruption in the time stream might somehow alter this reality, might erase these trees or change the course of her own life, filled her with a profound sense of responsibility. "I won't fail," she whispered to the silent trees. "I'll find what's been damaged and make it whole again." With that promise made to herself and to the quiet night, she finally returned to her bed, allowing her body to relax into the soft mattress. Her mind gradually quieted as she practiced the meditation techniques Master Kronos had taught her, visualizing her thoughts as leaves floating on a stream, neither clinging to them nor pushing them away, simply watching them drift past until the stream itself slowed to a peaceful stillness. In that calm space between wakefulness and dreams, Thea finally surrendered to sleep, her hand resting lightly on the Kronos anchor around her neck. Morning arrived with a soft chorus of bird song and the golden light of dawn filtering through Thea's window. She woke feeling remarkably refreshed, the information she had studied the night before somehow clearer and more integrated in her mind after a night's rest. After a simple breakfast of bread, honey, huge stone inscribed with symbols that seem to shift and change when not directly observed. This is a temporal waypoint, Master Kronos explained as they entered the circle. One of many I've established over the centuries. It will make your departure and return safer. The morning air was cool and fresh against Thea's skin, carrying the sense of damp earth and green growing things. Dew still clung to the moss and grass around the stone circle, catching the early sunlight and breaking it into countless tiny rainbows. Above them, the sky was clearing from the deep blue of early dawn to the lighter hue of full morning. Thea stood in the centre of the circle, dressed in simple travelling clothes, sturdy boots, comfortable leggings, a tunic of soft brown fabric, and a hooded cloak the colour of forest shadows. Her satchel containing the blue book and a few other necessities was slung across her body, and the pouch of temporal sand was secured at her belt. The Kronos anchor hung around her neck, its crystal catching the morning light. Master Kronos stood before her, his expression both proud and concerned, the look of a teacher sending a favoured student into their first true test. "Remember what you've learned," he said, his voice gentle yet firm. "Time is not a rigid structure, but a fluid medium. Don't fight against its currents. Learn to move with them. Your destination is approximately 70 years in the past, at the nexus point where the disruption appears to have originated." Thea nodded, her hands only slightly trembling as she removed the pouch of temporal sand from her belt. "How will I find the exact location?" she asked. "The Kronos anchor will guide you," Master Kronos replied. "Once you've arrived in the past, it will pull you toward the disruption, like a compass needle seeks north. Trust in its guidance and in your own temporal sensitivity." He stepped back to the edge of the stone circle, giving her space for the working of the transition spell. "When you've identified and prepared the disruption, use the remaining sand to return. Simply focus on this waypoint and the present moment as you cast it." Thea took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over her. "And if I encounter whoever is causing the disruption?" A shadow passed over the Timekeeper's features. "Observe first. Understand their methods and motivations. Some who tamper with time do so out of ignorance rather than malice. But if they threaten you or continue their tampering despite your intervention..." He hesitated, then continued more firmly. "Your primary responsibility is to the time stream and to your own safety. Do what you must." With a final nod of understanding, Thea opened the pouch and took a small pinch of the colour-shifting sand between her fingers. It felt strangely alive against her skin, vibrating with subtle energy. Closing her eyes, she focused her thoughts on the destination. 70 years past, the same location, the same forest. In her mind's eye, she imagined the trees younger, slightly smaller, the undergrowth different but recognisable. She visualised the spiral nature of time, seeing herself moving along its curve to an earlier point in its rotation. With this clear intention held firmly in her mind, she cast the temporal sand in a circle around herself, speaking the words Master Kronos had taught her that morning. "By moments lost and moments gained, by paths unwound and paths unchained, I seek the stream of what has been, to walk where present steps have never been." The effect was immediate and extraordinary. The sand particles hung suspended in the air around her, glowing with inner light that rapidly intensified. They began to spin, faster faster, creating a cylinder of brilliant energy that surrounded her completely. Through this swirling curtain of light, Thea could see Master Cronus watching, his figure becoming increasingly distorted and distant. The sound of bird song faded, replaced by a curious humming that seemed to resonate within her bones. The very air around her began to feel thicker, as though she were moving through water rather than atmosphere. Then came the sensation that Master Kronos had warned her about, a momentary feeling of being everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Her consciousness stretched thin across countless moments. It would have been terrifying if not for the solid presence of the Kronos anchor against her chest, providing a tether to her own reality. Just as the disorientation threatened to overwhelm her, there was a sudden sensation of compression, as though all of existence were being funneled through an impossibly narrow opening, followed by a gentle pop of pressure releasing. This sputtle. Swirling lights faded, the humming subsided, and Thea found herself standing in the same clearing, but unmistakably changed. The stone circle remained, though the symbols carved into the rocks looked fresher, less weathered by time. The trees surrounding the clearing were noticeably smaller, their bark less gnarled, their branches reaching not quite as high into the sky. The curious dwelling that had been visible from the clearing in a time was simply gone. Instead, a much smaller structure stood near the edge of the trees, a simple wooden cottage with a thatched roof and smoke rising from a stone chimney. This, she realised, must be the original home Master Kronos had built when he first settled in Elderwood, long before expanding it into the fascinating structure she knew. The air smelled different too, the same fundamental sense of forest and earth, but with subtle variations that her sensitive nose could detect. Certain flowering plants that had been common in her time were absent, while others that she rarely encountered grew in abundance. Most striking was the quality of the silence, the familiar background hum of distant human settlements, barely perceptible in her time but always present, was entirely absent. This past version of Elderwood existed in a world less populated, less traversed by humanity. Thea stood very still for a moment, allowing her senses to adjust to this new yet familiar environment. The transition had been disorienting, but not as severely as she had feared. Master Kronos had prepared her well. When she felt steady again, she lifted the Kronos anchor from where it rested against her chest, holding the crystal at eye level. As promised, it had changed. The previously clear crystal now held a faint luminescence within its depths, and she could sense a definite pull towards the east, deeper into the forest. That way then, she murmured to herself, taking a moment to secure her satchel more comfortably before setting off in the direction the anchor indicated. As Thea moved deeper into the younger version of Elderwood, she was struck by how the forest simultaneously felt familiar and strange. Paths that had been well-worn tracks in her time were barely visible here, while others that would eventually disappear were clear and frequently used. The morning air was crisp and invigorating, the sunlight dappling through the canopy to create shifting patterns on the forest floor. Birds called from the branches above. Some species she recognised, others whose songs had gone silent by her era. Small creatures rustled in the underbrush, occasionally visible as quick flashes of movement before disappearing into the vegetation. She walked for nearly an hour, following the pull of the Kronos anchor as it led her through the woods. The crystal's glow intensified gradually, indicating that she was approaching the source of the temporal disruption. The sensation sensation of wrongness that she had been taught to recognise was becoming palpable. A subtle discord in the otherwise harmonious flow of time around her, like a single instrument slightly out of tune in an orchestra. Eventually the trees began to thin, and Thea found herself approaching the edge of a meadow she didn't recognise from her own time. In her era, this area was part of the continuous forest, indistinguishable from the surrounding woods. But here, 70 years in the past, it was an open space, perhaps 100 paces across, filled with tall grasses and wildflowers swaying gently in the breeze. At the centre of the meadow stood a sight that made Thea halt in her tracks, a slender tower of black stone, approximately 30 feet tall, capped with a dome of dark, reflective material that reminded her of obsidian. The structure looked distinctly out of place in the natural setting, its perfectly geometric form contrasting sharply with the organic shapes of the surrounding landscape. Most concerning was the visible distortion in the air around the tower, a subtle wavering, as though the very fabric of reality was being stretched thin. Through the chrono's anchor, Thea could see what was invisible to ordinary perception, threads of temporal energy being pulled from the surrounding area and funneled into the tower like water circling a drain. "This wasn't here in my time," she whispered to herself, which means either it was removed or something changes to prevent it from being built at all. She crouched at the edge of the trees, observing the tower carefully. There was no sign of its creator, but the temporal distortion was actively increasing. Whatever process had been set in motion was still ongoing. Consulting her memory of the Blue Book's teachings, Thea recognised what she was seeing: a temporal extraction device designed to harvest the potential energy contained within the time stream itself. It was incredibly dangerous technology, capable of creating irreparable fractures in the fabric of reality if left operational for too long. "This is definitely the source of the disruption," she murmured, her fingers touching the chrono's anchor for reassurance. "But who built it? And what are they using the extracted energy for?" As if in answer to her question, a shimmering distortion appeared beside the tower. The air rippled and folded in on itself, and a figure stepped through what appeared to be a tear in reality itself. The newcomer was tall and slender, dressed in robes of deep crimson, embroidered with complex geometric patterns in gold thread. A hood obscured most of their face, but Thea could see the lower portion, lips curved in a satisfied smile, and a chin that spoke of stubborn determination. The figure approached the tower, placing a hand against its black surface. Immediately, the distortion in the air intensified, and a low humming became audible even from Thea's position at the edge of the meadow. With growing concern, she realised that the temporal extraction was being accelerated. If it continued at this rate, the damage to the time stream would soon reach a critical threshold, beyond which repair might be impossible. She had a decision to make: confront the robed figure directly, or attempt to sabotage the tower without revealing her presence. The first option was more dangerous, but might yield information about who was behind this tampering and why. The second was safer, but would address only the symptom rather than the cause. Master Kronos' voice echoed in her memory. "Observe first, understand their methods and motivations." Taking a deep breath to calm her racing heart, Thea settled more comfortably into her hiding place, focusing her attention on the robed figure and their activities. She would watch, learn what she could, and plan her intervention carefully. Time might be of the essence, but rashness would only create new problems. The figure in crimson robes worked methodically around the base of the tower, adjusting various small devices that Thea couldn't quite identify from her distance. Each adjustment caused subtle changes in the humming tone emanating from the structure and in the pattern of the temporal distortion surrounding it. From her vantage point, Thea opened her satchel silently and removed the blue book, keeping her movements slow and careful to avoid detection. She consulted the section on temporal extraction devices, comparing the descriptions and diagrams with what she was observing. According to the text, such devices operated by creating a resonance pattern that interfered with the natural flow of time, causing it to pool around the extractor where its energy could be harvested. The process was inherently unstable and, if left unchecked, would eventually collapse, releasing all the accumulated temporal energy in an uncontrolled burst. A temporal implosion that would leave a permanent scar in the fabric of reality. More worryingly, the book indicated that the extracted energy was typically used to power other, even more dangerous manipulations of the time stream, including the creation of divergent timelines or the elimination of specific events from history. As Thea watched, the robed figure completed their adjustments and stepped back to observe the tower. They reached into a pocket of their robes and removed a small object that caught the sunlight with a crystalline glint, something similar in appearance to her Chronos anchor, but with a darker, reddish tint to the crystal. The figure held this object up toward the tower, and Thea could see energy flowing from the tower into the crystal, causing it to glow with an increasingly intense red light. They were collecting the harvested temporal energy, presumably to fuel whatever larger scheme they had planned. This was even more concerning than the extraction itself. While the tower was causing damage to the local time stream, that damage might still be repairable. But once the extracted energy was removed and used elsewhere, countering its effects would become exponentially more difficult. Thea knew she needed to act soon, but she still lacked crucial information. Who was this person? Were they working alone, or as part of a larger group? What was their ultimate goal in harvesting temporal energy? As if sensing her questions, the figure suddenly spoke aloud, their voice carrying clearly across the meadow, despite not seeming to project particularly loudly. "The calibration is perfect," they said, apparently speaking to themselves. "Another hour of extraction should provide enough energy for the final phase. Elder Meridian will be pleased." The name sent a chill through Thea. Elder Meridian was known to her through Master Kronos' occasional warnings, the leader of a secretive order called the Kronos Divergent, who believed that time should be actively shaped and controlled, rather than preserved and protected. They viewed the natural flow of time as merely one possibility among many, and sought to create a reality more aligned with their own vision of perfection. Master Kronos had spoken of them as misguided rather than evil, dangerous in their certainty that they knew better than the natural order, but not malicious in their intent. They truly believed they were working toward a better world, ignoring the fundamental principle that attempting to force time into an unnatural configuration inevitably led to greater suffering and instability. The mention of a final phase was particularly alarming. It suggested that this extraction was part of a larger plan already well underway. Thea needed to discover what that plan entailed, but she also couldn't allow the extraction to continue much longer. Making a quick decision, she carefully returned the book to her satchel and began to circle the meadow, keeping to the cover of the trees. If she could approach from behind while the figure was focused on the tower, she might be able to get close enough to overhear more without being detected. and she used the natural sounds of the forest to mask what little noise she couldn't avoid making. As she drew closer to the far side of the meadow, she could hear the robed figure continuing to speak, apparently dictating notes to themselves. Extraction point 7 of 9, they were saying. Location selected for its intersection of 3 minor ley lines, providing optimal energy flow. Temporal density in this region is 14% higher than baseline, likely due to proximity to the Elderwood nexus. This should be the most productive extraction site yet. Thea froze at the mention of 7 of 9. This wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a series of extractions taking place at different locations. The cumulative damage would be catastrophic, like removing multiple keystones from an arch, eventually causing the entire structure to collapse. Once all 9 sites have been harvested, the figure continued, will have sufficient energy to implement the Great Divergence. The Council of Elders has already selected the critical juncture. The Battle of Weaven's Pass, 3 centuries past. By altering its outcome, the entire subsequent flow of history will be redirected. The age of restriction will never come to pass, and our order will guide humanity's development along a more enlightened path. The Battle of Wyvern's Pass. Thea knew it from her historical studies, a seemingly minor conflict that had led to the establishment of the Concord of magical limitation, restricting the use of certain dangerous forms of magic. The Concord had been formed after a particularly devastating spell had been used during the battle, killing hundreds on both sides in an instant and leaving the pass itself magically contaminated for decades. If the Kronos Divergent were planning to prevent that battle or change its outcome, the results would be far-reaching indeed. Without the sobering lesson of that tragedy, the restrictions on dangerous magic might never have been implemented. Centuries of magical development would follow a completely different path, potentially a much more destructive one. This was precisely the kind of interference that Master Kronos had warned against. Not just adjusting minor details of history, but attempting to fundamentally redirect its course based on the limited perspective of a few individuals who believed they knew better than the collective wisdom that had shaped events naturally. Thea had heard enough. The danger was clear, and she now understood both the method and the motivation behind the disruption. It was time to act. Drawing on her training, she focused her mind and prepared to confront the member of the Kronos Divergent. She would have had only one chance to surprise them, and she needed to make it count. Carefully, she removed a small cloth bag from her satchel, one containing a powder of her own making, a formulation that temporarily disrupted a person's connection to his flow of time, essentially freezing them in place for several minutes. It was meant to be used defensively, as a means of escape from dangerous situations, but it would serve equally well as a way to incapacitate the robed figure long enough to disable the tower. Taking a deep breath to steady herself, Thea stepped from the cover of the trees and moved swiftly across the open meadow toward the unsuspecting figure. The tall grasses swished softly around her legs as she ran, and she saw the figure begin to turn at the sound, but she was faster. Before they could fully turn or raise any defense, Thea had closed the distance between them and cast the freezing powder directly into their face, simultaneously speaking the activation phrase, "Between moments, find stillness." The effect was instantaneous. The figure froze in mid-motion, their body becoming rigid as the powder took effect. Their eyes, now visible beneath the hood, deep brown with flecks of gold, not unlike Thea's own, widened in shock, and then became fixed, staring at her without being I'm sorry, Thea said quietly, but I can't allow you to continue. The damage you're causing to the time stream could be irreparable. Without waiting for a response that couldn't come, she turned her attention to the tower. Up close, she could see that its surface was covered in intricate engravings, mathematical formulas and arcane symbols that guided and controlled the extraction process. At its base were several small devices similar to sundials, but with multiple gnomons pointing in different directions, apparently measuring various aspects of the temporal flow. Consulting her memory of the Blue Book's instructions, Thea identified the primary control mechanism, a central dial at the base of the tower with settings that regulated the intensity of the extraction. Carefully, she began to adjust it, gradually reducing the power rather than shutting it off completely. An abrupt cessation might cause a backlash of temporal energy that could be as damaging as the extraction itself. As she worked, she was acutely aware of the frozen figure standing just a few feet away, their eyes following her movements despite their inability to interfere. There was something unsettling about those eyes, not just their similarity to her own, but the intensity of emotion visible within them. Not anger, as she might have expected, but something more complex. Disappointment, perhaps, or a strange kind of recognition. Pushing aside this distraction, Thea continued the careful process of powering down the extraction device. The humming emanating from the tower gradually decreased in pitch and volume, and the visible distortion in the surrounding air began to subside. When the dial reached its lowest setting, she removed it completely, pocketing the small mechanism to ensure the device couldn't be reactivated. The tower was now inert, its harmful process halted, though the damage already done to the time stream would still need to be repaired. Turning back to the frozen figure, Thea noticed that the effects of the powder were beginning to wear off sooner than expected. Slight tremors ran through their form, indicating that movement would soon return. She had perhaps a minute, no more, before they would be able to act again. Quickly, she retrieved the crimson crystal they had been using to collect the extracted energy. It pulsed with an angry red glow, warm to the touch and vibrating slightly against her palm. According to her studies, such energy couldn't be simply destroyed or dispersed safely. It needed to be returned to the time stream through a controlled process. The frozen figure was now showing more significant signs of recovery. Their fingers twitched, and their chest began to move with shallow breaths. Thea knew she had to act quickly. Placing the red crystal on the ground, she removed the pouch of temporal sand, taking a much larger pinch than she had used for her own journey. This would require more power. She scattered the sand in a circle around the crystal while reciting a different incantation, one designed not for travel but for reintegration. What was taken out of time now returned to its rightful stream. Heal the wound, mend the breach, restore the flow that should always be. The sand grains began to glow and swirl around the crystal, forming a miniature whirlwind of golden light. The red glow of the crystal intensified briefly, then began to fade as the extracted energy was drawn out and channeled back into the time stream. The process created a beautiful display of light, tendrils of gold and red intertwining, spiraling upward and then dispersing into the air like a firework slowly falling back to earth. As the last of the energy dissipated, the now clear crystal fell to the grass with a soft thud. The damage wasn't completely repaired. That would take time as the natural flow reasserted itself. But the harmful extraction had been halted, and the effect released them completely. They pulled back their hood, revealing the face of a woman perhaps 10 years older than Thea, with sharp features and dark hair streaked with premature grey. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" the woman demanded, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Years of planning, of careful calculation, all undone by a novice who understands nothing of what we're trying to accomplish." Thea stood, her ground, though her heart raced with apprehension. "I understand enough. You're harvesting temporal energy to change a pivotal historical event. You call it the Great Divergence. But what you're actually creating is a fracture in reality itself, one that could spread and destabilize countless lives across multiple time streams." The woman's expression shifted from anger to surprise. "You're well informed for a saboteur. Who sent you? The conservators? The temporal accord?" "I serve the natural flow of time," Thea replied simply. "My master taught me that our role is to protect the integrity of the time stream, not to reshape it according to our own preferences." "Your master," the woman repeated, her eyes narrowing as she studied Thea more carefully. "Not Kronos, the great Timekeeper himself." When Thea didn't deny it, the woman laughed, a short, humourless sound. "How appropriate. He sent his apprentice to undo my work, just as I once sought to undo his. The symmetry would be beautiful if it weren't so frustrating." Confusion flickered across Thea's face. "What do you mean? Do you know Master Kronos?" The woman's smile was tinged with bitterness. "Once, I knew him very well indeed. He was my teacher, as he is now yours. I was his apprentice before you were born, girl. My name is Elara, though he probably never mentioned me." The revelation struck Thea like a physical blow. This woman had been Master Kronos' apprentice. He had spoken occasionally of previous students, but never in detail, and certainly never by name. "If you were his apprentice," she said carefully, "then you were taught the same principles I was. The importance of preserving temporal integrity, of respecting the natural flow of events. I was taught to be a passive observer," Lyra corrected sharply, "to watch suffering and injustice unfold across centuries without intervention, to value some abstract concept of temporal purity above the lives and happiness of real people." Her eyes flashed with conviction. "But I came to understand that such passivity is its own form of interference. By choosing not to act when we have the power to improve the course of history, we become complicit in all the suffering that follows." Thea could see the genuine belief behind Lyra's words. This wasn't simple power-seeking or casual disregard for consequences. Lyra truly believed that she was working toward a better world. "But how can you be certain your changes will improve things?" Thea countered. "The Battle of Weaven's Pass was tragic, yes, but it led to safeguards that prevented even greater tragedies. Without those restrictions, dangerous magic could proliferate unchecked." "We've studied all possible outcomes," Lyra insisted. "The Kronos Divergent includes the greatest temporal mathematicians and historians ever to live. We've calculated the probability streams with precision you can't imagine. The world that emerges from our intervention will be measurably better in every important aspect. No calculation can capture every variable," Thea said, repeating one of Master Kronos' most frequent lessons. "Time is too complex, too interconnected. Change one significant event, and the ripples affect countless others in ways impossible to predict fully." Lyra's expression hardened. "That's fear speaking. Fear of change. Fear of taking responsibility. It's easier to hide behind platitudes had to accept the moral burden of actively shaping a better future. The conviction in her voice was unsettling. Thea could understand how such reasoning might seem compelling, especially to someone gifted with the ability to perceive and manipulate the time stream. The temptation to fix what seemed broken, to erase tragedies, and redirect history toward happier outcomes must be nearly overwhelming at times. Why did you leave Master Kronos' tutelage? Thea asked, genuinely curious. What changed your mind about these principles? A shadow passed over Lyra's features. I witnessed a temporal nexus event, a moment where multiple possible futures converged and then diverged based on a single decision. I saw the better path that could have been taken, and I saw your master deliberately choose not to intervene, allowing the darker timeline to manifest. Her voice grew softer, tinged with old pain. Thousands died in a plague that need never have happened, all because of his rigid adherence to non-interference. Thea didn't know how to respond to this. Master Kronos had never spoken of such an event, though she knew there were many aspects of his long life he had yet to share with her. Before she could formulate a reply, Lyra continued, her voice regaining its strength. But this isn't about old grievances. The tower you've disabled is only one of 9. The other extraction sites remain operational, and our plan will proceed, albeit with reduced power. You've created a setback, not a defeat. Thea straightened, her resolve firming. Then I'll find and disable the others as well. Lyra smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Will you? Do you even know where to look? And can you reach them all before we've gathered enough energy to proceed with the divergence? It was a valid question. Thea had no idea where the other extraction sites might be located, and tracking them down would take time she might not have. There's another option, Lyra said, her tone shifting to something almost conciliatory. Join us. You clearly have talent and conviction. The Kronos Divergent could use someone with your abilities. Help us create a better world instead of preserving a flawed one. The offer was unexpected, and for the briefest moment, Thea found herself considering it. What if Lyra was right? What if the careful calculations of the Kronos Divergent could indeed create a better timeline? The allure of actively shaping a more just world was powerful, but then she remembered the visible distortion around the tower, the fundamental wrongness she had sensed in the disrupted time stream. Whatever their intentions, the methods of the Kronos Divergent were causing harm to the very fabric of reality. I can't, she said finally. Not like this. The damage you're causing to the time stream itself is too great. There must be better ways to effect positive change. Ways that work with the natural flow rather than against it. Disappointment flashed across Lyra's face, quickly replaced by resigned determination. Then, we remain at cross purposes. She reached into her robes and removed a small device similar to the one Thea had used to travel to this time. I won't try to stop you from leaving, but know that this confrontation has only delayed the inevitable. The great divergence will happen, with or without your approval. With those words, Lyra activated her device, creating a swirling portal similar to the one she had arrived through. She stepped backward toward it, maintaining eye contact with Thea until the last moment. Ask your master about Meridian City, she said, just before disappearing into the portal. Ask him about the choice he made 30 years ago. Then decide if his path is truly the one you wish to follow. And with that, she was gone, the portal collapsing behind her with a soft sound like a distant sigh. Thea stood alone in the meadow, the disabled tower a dark monument before her, and the now clear crystal at her feet situation was far more complex than she had initially believed. But one thing was certain. She needed to return to her own time and report what she had learned to master Kronos. The threat of the Great Divergence remained, and they would need to find a way to locate and neutralize the remaining extraction sites before it was too late. Picking up the crystal as evidence, Thea moved to the center of the meadow. She removed the pouch of temporal sand, noting that it was significantly lighter after the energy reintegration process. She would have enough for the return journey, but not much more. Taking a careful pinch of the remaining sand, she focused her thoughts on the stone circle behind Master Kronos' dwelling. On her own time, she visualized the forest as she knew it, the familiar paths and trees, the curious structure that was home. With this clear image in her mind, she cast the sand in a circle around herself and spoke the words of return. By paths now known and steps retraced, by time's own flow now be embraced, return me to my proper place where future meets the present's face. Once again, the sand particles hung suspended in the air, glowing and beginning to spin around her. The disorienting sensation of temporal transition washed over her, but it was somewhat easier to bear this time, now that she knew what to expect. The meadow and the dark tower faded from view, replaced by the swirling lights of the transition space. Thea held firmly to the Kronos anchor, using it as her guide through the between time, focusing on her destination with unwavering concentration. After what felt like both an instant and an eternity, the swirling stopped, the pressure equalized, and Thea found herself standing once again in the stone circle behind Master Kronos' dwelling, her dwelling in her time. But something was wrong. The forest around her was similar, yet subtly different from how she remembered it. The trees seemed arranged in slightly altered positions, and paths she recalled clearly were either missing or relocated. Most concerning of all, the curious structure that should have been visible from the stone circle was nowhere to be seen. Instead, a tower stood in its place, not the black extraction tower from the past, but a graceful structure of white stone with numerous arched windows and a roof of silver that caught the sunlight. It was beautiful, certainly, but it was not the home she had left that morning. With growing apprehension, Thea looked down at the Kronos anchor. The crystal was clear again, showing no signs of temporal distortion in her immediate vicinity. According to the anchor, she was where she was supposed to be, which could only mean one thing: something had changed. Despite her intervention, despite halting the extraction and returning the stolen energy to the time stream, some aspect of the past had been altered significantly enough to create a different present than the one she had left. The implications were staggering. Had Lyra or the Kronos Divergent implemented part of their plan already? Had Thea's own actions somehow caused this change inadvertently? Or was there another factor she hadn't yet considered? With no clear answers and a sense of urgent confusion, Thea made her way towards the unfamiliar tower that now occupied the place where her home should have been. Whatever had happened, whatever had changed, she needed to understand it, and quickly. As she approached the white tower, Thea noticed details that were both reassuring and disturbing. The garden surrounding the structure contained many of the same herbs and plants that Master Kronos had cultivated, arranged in familiar patterns. The path leading to the entrance was paved with the same river stones she remembered. Even the door knocker, a brass sculpture of an Ouroboros, a serpent eating its own tail, was identical to the one from her home. Yet the structure itself was utterly different, taller, more elegant, and constructed of materials that suggested considerable wealth, and resources had gone into its creation. This was not the somewhat ramshackle, organically evolved dwelling she had left that morning, but rather a deliberately designed and carefully constructed edifice. Before she could reach the door, it swung open, and a figure emerged onto the path. Tall, white-haired, with a neatly trimmed beard and piercing blue eyes that widened in surprise at the sight of her. "Thea," Master Kronos said, his voice conveying genuine shock. "Is it really you?" The question sent a chill through her. Why would he ask such a thing? Of course it was her. She had only been gone for a few hours from her perspective. "Master," she replied uncertainly. "What's happened? Everything's different." He moved toward her with surprising speed for one who appeared so elderly, grasping her shoulders as though to confirm she was physically present. His eyes searched her, face with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. "You're truly here," he said, his voice thick with emotion that Thea had rarely heard from a typically composed mentor. "After all this time, you've returned." "All this time?" Thea echoed, confusion mounting. "Master, I left this morning. I've been gone only a few hours." Master Kronos' hands dropped from her shoulders, and his expression shifted to one of dawning comprehension. "Ah," he said softly. "Time displacement, of course." He gestured toward the tower. "Come inside, Thea. There is much to explain, and it seems you have much to tell me as well." Still deeply unsettled, Thea followed him up the path and through the unfamiliar door. The interior of the tower was as different from her home as the exterior. Spacious, elegantly appointed, with a spiral staircase of polished wood curving up through the centre of the main room. Shelves lined the walls here too, but they were orderly and organised. Nothing like the cheerful chaos of the workshop she remembered. Master Kronos led her to a sitting area near a large window that overlooked the forest. As they settled into comfortable chairs facing each other, he studied her with that same unsettling intensity. "From your perspective, you left this morning to investigate the temporal disruption I detected," he stated, rather than asked. When she nodded, he continued. "And you found the extraction tower in the meadow, 70 years in the past." "Yes," Thea confirmed, increasingly concerned by his manner. "I disabled it and confronted the woman who built it, Elara, your former apprentice." At the mention of Lyra's name, a complex emotion passed across Master Kronos' features. Sadness, regret, and something else Thea couldn't quite identify. "You met Elara," he said quietly. "I should have warned you that you might encounter her, but I had no way of knowing." "Master," Thea interrupted, unable to contain her confusion any longer. "Please tell me what's happened. Why is everything different? How long have I been gone?" He sighed deeply, his age suddenly more visible in the slump of his shoulders and the lines around his eyes. "From my perspective, Thea, you left 27 years ago and never returned, until today." The word struck her like a physical blow. 27 years. But that was impossible. She had followed the return procedure exactly as he had taught her. The Kronos anchor had guided her back to her proper time. "Ah, I don't understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I used the temporal sand correctly. I focused on this place, this time. How could I have missed by 27 years?" "You didn't miss," Master Kronos said, rising from his chair and moving to a shelf where he retrieved a familiar blue book. satchel. You returned exactly when and where you intended, but the time you left and the time you returned to are no longer the same reality. A divergent timeline, Thea breathed, the implications slowly dawning on her. But how? I stopped the extraction. I returned the stolen energy to the time stream. You stopped one extraction point, Master Kronos corrected gently, but as you've no doubt learned, there were others. And while you were in the past, events in the present continued to unfold. He opened the blue book, turning to a diagram that Thea recognized, a visual representation of how divergent timelines could splinter from a primary stream. When you didn't return that day, I attempted to locate you in the temporal matrix, but it was as though you had simply disappeared from existence. I could find no trace of your temporal signature anywhere in the pattern. And Lyra, the Chronosi, divergent. Did they succeed in their plan to change the Battle of Wyvern's Pass? A shadow passed over Master Kronos' face. No, that particular plan was thwarted, largely due to the information you must have gathered during your confrontation with Lyra. The details you've yet to share with me, but will shortly. He smiled faintly at her confusion. Time is complicated, dear Thea. But if their plan was stopped, why is everything so different? Why didn't I return to the same timeline I left? Master Kronos set the book aside and returned to his chair, his movements measured and somewhat stiffer than she remembered. Because in your absence, I made different choices than I would have made had you returned as expected. Your disappearance altered me, altered my actions, and those changes rippled outward, creating this variant of the timeline you knew. There was something he wasn't telling her, something significant. Thea could sense the omission like a gap in a familiar melody. What did you do, Master? She asked directly. What changed? He met her gaze steadily. I abandoned my principle of non-interference. After losing you, after believing you lost forever in the temporal matrix, I reconsidered many of my most firmly held beliefs. I began to wonder if Lyra had been right all along, if my rigid adherence to temporal conservation had been misguided. This admission was so contrary to everything Thea knew of her master that she could scarcely believe she was hearing it correctly. Master Kronos had always been the ultimate advocate for preserving the natural flow of time, for respecting the integrity of the time stream above all else. And so, I began to make selective, careful adjustments, he continued. Small interventions, at first, preventing accidents, averting natural disasters, guiding certain key individuals toward choices that would benefit humanity. As my confidence grew, so did the scope of my alterations. You created this timeline, Thea said, understanding, finally dawning. You became what Lyra wanted to be, a shaper of time rather than its keeper. In a sense, he acknowledged, though I believe my approach has been more measured, more considered than what Lyra and the Kronos Divergent proposed. I never sought to make a single massive change as they did with their Great Divergence plan. Instead, I made hundreds of small adjustments, nudging the timeline toward a more beneficial configuration, bit by bit. Thea glanced around at the elegant tower, the visible signs of prosperity and careful design. And the results, are they what you hoped for? A complex expression crossed his face, pride mingled with uncertainty. In many ways, yes, wars have been averted, diseases cured before they became pandemics, technological advancement accelerated in beneficial directions, while harmful developments have been discouraged. sensing his reservation. But there have been unanticipated consequences as well, developments I couldn't have foreseen, despite all my calculations and projections. He sighed. The human spirit has proven more resistant to guided evolution than I anticipated. There is a certain vitality, a creative chaos that seems diminished in this carefully tended reality, and I have begun to wonder if, in my well-intentioned meddling, I've robbed humanity of something essential. The right to find its own way, to make its own mistakes and learn from them. The irony wasn't lost on Thea. Master Kronos had come to doubt the very path that Lyra had so passionately advocated, the active shaping of time, while Thea herself was now confronted with evidence that such shaping could, indeed, create a better world in material terms. What happens now? She asked quietly. Can I return to my original timeline? Does it even still exist? Master Kronos' expression softened. It exists, though it has continued to develop in your absence. But reaching it would be extraordinarily difficult. Your arrival here has created a connection between you and this timeline, anchoring you to this reality. But it's possible. Thea pressed. Theoretically, he admitted, with sufficient skill and the right tools, one can navigate between variant timelines. But the question isn't just can you return, but should you? It was the central question, wasn't it? If this timeline was indeed objectively better, more peaceful, more prosperous, what right did she have to prefer the original, more troubled version, simply because it was familiar? Was that not the same kind of rigid thinking that Master Kronos had abandoned in her absence? Yet she couldn't shake the feeling of wrongness that permeated this reality. Not a temporal wrongness like the distortion around the extraction tower, but a more subtle dissonance, as though this world, for all its apparent improvements, was somehow less authentic, less true to the natural unfolding of human potential. I need time to think, she said finally. This is overwhelming. Master Kronos nodded understandingly. Of course, you've experienced quite a shock, jumping forward nearly 3 decades in what felt to you like moments. Take all the time you need. He gestured toward the spiral staircase. I've maintained a room for you all these years. It's not identical to your old chamber, but I think you'll find it comfortable. The thought that he had kept a room for her all this time, never giving up hope of her return, touched Thea deeply. Whatever else had changed, her master's care for her apparently remained constant. As she rose to seek the solitude of this new yet prepared for her room, a thought occurred to her. Master, Lyra mentioned something before she left. She told me to ask you about Meridian City and a choice you made 30 years ago. What did she mean? The question clearly struck a nerve. Master Kronos' composed exterior cracked slightly, a flash of old pain visible in his eyes before he mastered it. Meridian City was where Lyra and I parted ways, he said quietly. It was the site of the temporal nexus event she mentioned to you. The convergence of multiple potential futures. A virulent plague was about to emerge there, one that would eventually kill thousands. And you chose not to prevent it, Thea said, remembering Lyra's accusation. I chose to allow the natural course of events to proceed. He corrected gently. The plague, terrible as it was, led to crucial advances in medical science that saved millions more in subsequent decades. Lyra saw only the immediate suffering and wanted to prevent it. She couldn't or wouldn't perceive the larger pattern. And now, would you make the same choice again? Master Kronos was silent for a long moment. No, he said finally. Now I would find a third path. One that neither accepted the plague as inevitable, nor erased the medical advances it precipitated. I would seek a more creative intervention. He smiled sadly. That is what I've learned in your absence, dear Thea. Time is not a binary choice between interference and non-interference, but a complex dance of discernment and humility. With those words lingering in her mind, Thea made her way up the spiral staircase, seeking the room her master had maintained for her through decades of believing her lost forever. The room was both familiar and strange, much like everything else in this altered timeline. The dimensions were similar to her old chamber, and many of her personal possessions were arranged on shelves and tables. Her collection of unusual stones, the illustrated book of constellations she had loved since childhood, even the small wooden box where she kept special feathers and leaves collected during her walks in the forest. But the room itself was different, larger, with higher ceilings and a wide window seat overlooking the forest. The furnishings were finer than those she remembered, the bed larger and more comfortable looking, the desk by the window made of polished wood rather than the simple pine of her original furniture. Most striking was the wall opposite the window, which was covered entirely with a map. Not a geographical map, but a temporal one. Intricate lines in various colours spread across the surface, like the branches of an enormous tree, each representing a different potential timeline. At various points, small crystal markers had been placed, some glowing faintly with inner light, others dark and dormant. Thea approached this map with interest and apprehension. Near its centre, she found a marker unlike the others, a small silver star that pulsed gently with a warm golden light. As she drew near, the Chronos anchor around her neck responded, growing momentarily warmer against her skin. That represents you, came Master Kronos' voice from the doorway. She turned to find him standing there, a gentle smile on his face. I created it after you disappeared, as a focus for my attempts to locate you in the temporal matrix. It's connected to the Chronos anchor I gave you, designed to resonate with it across time streams. And these other markers, she asked, gesturing to the various crystals embedded in the map. Significant nexus points, moments where multiple potential futures converge and then diverge based on key decisions or events. He moved to stand beside her, his gaze travelling across the complex pattern. I've used this map to guide my interventions, focusing on points where small changes might yield significant positive outcomes while minimising unintended consequences. Thea studied the map more closely, noting how some lines terminated abruptly, while others branched repeatedly into increasingly fine networks. How do you decide which points to alter? How can you be certain which changes will lead to better outcomes? I can't be certain, he admitted. Not absolutely. I've developed mathematical models to predict probable results, and I've learned to sense the resonance of different potential futures. Some simply feel more harmonious, more aligned with the deeper patterns of existence. Like the music of the spheres, Thea murmured, recalling an ancient concept he had taught her. The idea that celestial bodies created a form of cosmic harmony as they moved through their orbits. Precisely. He seemed pleased by her reference. Time has its own music, its own harmonies and discords. I've learned to listen for the most melodious possibilities. It was a beautiful concept, and Thea could understand its appeal. Yet something still troubled her about this approach. something fundamental. But even the most discordant music can be meaningful, she said slowly, working through her thoughts as she spoke. Even dissonance serves a purpose in a larger composition. Master, Kronos regarded her thoughtfully. An interesting perspective. You suggest that what seems disharmonious might be essential to the fuller composition of time. Perhaps, Thea said, not entirely certain of her own meaning, but feeling the rightness of the direction. I'm reminded of something you once told me, that our limited perspective makes it impossible to fully comprehend the complete pattern of time. We see only fragments, moments, brief sections of an infinite tapestry. I said that. He seemed amused. It sounds like something I would have believed before you began shaping time rather than keeping it, Thea said. Not as an accusation, but as a simple statement of fact. Yes. He didn't deny the characterization. Your disappearance changed me, Thea. It made me question everything I had believed about my role and responsibilities. The personal nature of his motivation struck her suddenly. You tried to find me, she realized. When I didn't return, you attempted to locate me in the past and bring me back. Of course, he acknowledged. I spent years searching the temporal matrix for any trace of you. When that failed, I began to consider more direct interventions, altering the past to prevent you from disappearing in the first place. But that would have created a paradox, Thea said, remembering her lessons on temporal mechanics. Indeed, and so I restrained myself from that particular temptation, but the experience opened me to considering other interventions, other changes that might benefit humanity without creating such direct contradictions. Thea moved to the window seat and sat down, looking out at the forest as she absorbed all she had learned. The trees were the same species she remembered, but their arrangement was subtly different, more orderly somehow, as though they had been deliberately planted rather than having grown naturally over centuries. Everything here is better in measurable ways, she said after a long moment of contemplation. More beautiful, more harmonious, more comfortable, and yet it feels somehow less real, Master Kronos finished for her. Less authentic. She looked up at him, surprised by his insight. Yes, exactly that. He nodded, his expression somber. I've begun to feel the same in recent years. This carefully tended reality lacks something essential, the vital uncertainty that comes with genuine freedom, the messy, unpredictable creativity that emerges from struggle and chance and unforeseen combinations, like a garden that's been too carefully weeded, Thea suggested. A apt metaphor, he agreed, in removing what I judged to be harmful or discordant. I may have also eliminated elements that were essential to the ecosystem's true flourishing. This admission that his years of intentional shaping might have been misguided despite their measurable benefits seemed to weigh heavily on him. Thea felt a surge of compassion for her mentor, who had clearly struggled with these questions for decades in her absence. What would happen, she asked carefully, if you simply stopped? If you ceased making further adjustments and allowed this timeline to develop naturally from this point forward? Master Kronos considered the question, his gaze moving to the temporal map with its intricate network of possibilities. It would continue along its current trajectory for some time, the momentum of past changes carrying it forward. Eventually, the natural chaos and creativity of human existence would reassert itself, creating new patterns, new possibilities that even I couldn't couldn't shape her. He was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. I would consider it, yes, especially now that you've returned. A smile touched his lips. Perhaps your reappearance is itself a correction, the time stream's way of restoring balance. The idea was appealing, suggesting that the complex mechanisms of time might possess a kind of self-healing property, a tendency to return to their natural patterns despite temporary perturbations. There's something else we need to consider, Thea said, returning to more immediate concerns. The Chronos divergent. You said their plan to alter the Battle of Wyvern's Pass was thwarted, but do they still exist in this timeline? Are they still attempting to implement their great divergence in some other form? Master Kronos' expression grew more serious. They exist, though in diminished form. Many of their members were persuaded to join my efforts instead, as my approach offered a more measured path to the improvements they sought. Lyra herself. He hesitated, and Thea felt a sudden apprehension. What about Lyra? She died, Thea, 10 years ago, in an attempt to create a more radical divergence than I would sanction. The temporal backlash was severe. The news was unexpected and oddly saddening, despite their brief and confrontational interaction. Thea had sensed a genuine conviction in Lyra, a passionate belief that she was working toward a better world. Misguided, perhaps, but not malevolent. I'm sorry, she said simply. As am I, Master Kronos replied, his voice heavy with old regret. We were alike in many ways, Lyra and I, both convinced of our own rightness, both willing to take extraordinary measures to implement our vision of how things should be. The parallel was striking. Master Kronos and Lyra had begun from opposite positions, one committed to preservation, the other to intervention. Yet over time, they had moved toward a similar middle ground, though approaching it from different directions. And now, Thea asked, what becomes of the timeline, of both timelines? Master Kronos moved to sit beside her on the window seat, his gaze turning to the forest beyond. That, my dear apprentice, is a question I've been pondering extensively in recent years. Is it possible, or desirable, to merge divergent timelines? To find a middle path that incorporates the benefits of my interventions while restoring the vital unpredictability of the original stream? And the concept was staggering in its implications. Merging timelines wasn't something covered in any of the texts Thea had studied. It seemed theoretically impossible, like trying to braid water. You believe that could be done? She asked, unable to keep the skepticism from her voice. Not easily, he admitted. It would require a completely new approach to temporal manipulation, one that works with the natural tendencies of the time stream rather than against them. He turned to her, his blue eyes alight with something she hadn't seen since her arrival in this altered present. Hope. It would require, perhaps, the unique perspective of someone who has experienced both timelines directly. Someone with mercy, an innate sensitivity to temporal energies, and a deep respect for the integrity of time itself. The implication was clear. Master Kronos believed that Thea herself, with her unusual sensitivity to time's flow and her direct experience of both timeline variants, might be key to finding this theoretical middle path. I don't know if such a thing is possible, she said honestly. The theory alone would be unprecedented, let alone the practical application. Indeed, he agreed, it would be the work of years, perhaps decades, to develop the necessary understanding and techniques. His expression grew more Master Kronos exclaimed, clearly delighted by her understanding, not imposing our will upon time, nor merely observing its flow, but entering into a kind of dialogue with it, listening to its inherent patterns and working with them rather than against them. The concept resonated with Thea in a way that neither the strict non-interference philosophy nor the active shaping approach had fully satisfied. It acknowledged both human responsibility and the limits of human understanding, a balanced middle way that might avoid the pitfalls of either extreme. I would be willing to explore this possibility, she said after a moment's reflection, though I can't promise success. The theoretical challenges alone are enormous. That is all I would ask, Master Kronos said, his expression softening into a smile of genuine warmth. That we explore this path together as teacher and student, though perhaps those roles may shift and evolve as we proceed. The acknowledgement that she might bring valuable insights to this undertaking, that their relationship might become more of a partnership than a traditional master-apprentice dynamic, touched Thea deeply. Despite the disorientation of finding herself in an altered timeline, despite the shock of learning that 27 years had passed in what felt to her like hours, she sensed that she was exactly where she needed to be at this moment. Outside the window, the afternoon was fading toward evening, the forest taking on the golden glow of approaching sunset. The familiar pattern of light and shadow among the trees was comforting despite the subtle differences in their arrangement. Whatever else had changed, the fundamental cycles of nature, day following night, seasons turning in their ancient dance, remained constant across all timelines. We should rest, Master Kronos said, rising from the window seat. Tomorrow will bring new challenges and possibilities. He moved toward the door, then paused, turning back to her with an expression of quiet joy. I still can hardly believe you've returned, Thea. Whatever the temporal implications, whatever the theoretical puzzles we must solve, I am simply glad to have you here again. With those words, he left her to her thoughts, closing the door softly behind him. Alone in the unfamiliar, yet prepared for her room, Thea found herself oddly at peace, despite the enormous shift in her circumstances. The path ahead was unclear, the challenges daunting, but there was a rightness to the situation that transcended ordinary logic. Perhaps time itself had brought her to this point for a reason, not by design, not by accident, but through that mysterious interplay of causality and chance that governs all existence. Perhaps her unique journey through the constructs of time was neither a mistake to be corrected, nor a destiny to be fulfilled, but simply the next step in an unfolding process that included both purpose and spontaneity. As the last light of day faded from the sky and the first stars became visible above the forest, Thea felt a deep sense of connection to her mentor, to both versions of the timeline she had experienced, and to the vast, mysterious flow of time itself. Whatever came next, she would face it with the same mixture of careful planning and open receptivity that had guided her since beginning her apprenticeship with the Timekeeper. For tonight it was enough to rest, to integrate all she had learned, and to prepare herself for the extraordinary journey that still lay ahead. A journey not just through the constructs of time, but toward a new understanding of humanity's relationship with the temporal matrix that surrounds and permeates all existence. As she settled onto the bed, feeling its unfamiliar yet comfortable support, Thea's thoughts began to slow and quiet. The Kronos anchor around her neck pulsed gently with warmth, as though confirming that despite everything that had changed, she remained connected to her essential self, to her origin point in the great web of time. With that reassuring sensation as her companion, she drifted toward sleep, her consciousness gradually releasing the questions and complexities of her extraordinary day, surrendering to the simple, universal rhythm of rest and renewal that transcends all timelines, all realities, all possible worlds. The Timekeeper's apprentice rests now, her journey through the constructs of time temporarily paused. Though she has discovered truths both wondrous and troubling, though she has glimpsed possibilities beyond ordinary understanding, her body and mind require the restoration that only deep sleep can provide. As Thea sleeps, the Chronos anchor continues its gentle pulsing against her skin, maintaining her connection to the complex web of temporal energy that surrounds her. In her dreams, she might catch glimpses of other possibilities, other paths, the timeline she left behind, the one she now inhabits, and perhaps others yet unexplored. The patterns of time flow around and through her, carrying with them the eternal mystery of existence, how moments connect to form hours, how hours build into days and years and centuries, how each instant contains within it echoes of all that has been and seeds of all that might yet be. Rest deeply, Timekeeper's apprentice. Rest in the knowledge that time itself holds you in its gentle embrace, that your journey continues even in stillness, that the path ahead will reveal itself when you are ready to walk it once more. Let your breathing slow and deepen, your muscles release their tension, your thoughts dissolve into the quiet pool of pure awareness. Like time itself, you are both still and moving, both defined and limitless, both precisely who you are and endlessly becoming. The forest outside keeps its ancient vigil, trees standing as silent witnesses to the passage of countless days and nights. The stars wheel overhead in their eternal dance, measuring out cosmic time in patterns too vast for human minds to fully comprehend. Yet in your sleep, some deeper part of you resonates with these grand rhythms, these fundamental pulses of existence. Sleep now, and know that when you wake, new understanding will begin to take form within you, not through effort or striving, but through the natural unfolding of insight that comes when the conscious mind steps back and allows deeper wisdom to emerge. Time heals, time reveals, time transforms, and you, who have walked between its moments and glimpsed its intricate structures, are held within its flow like a treasured element in a vast and beautiful composition. Rest, Thea, rest and renew. The journey continues tomorrow as we begin to draw our story to a close. Let's return once more to the image of Thea sleeping peacefully in her room in the White Tower. The moonlight now streams through her window, casting a gentle silver glow across her sleeping form. Her breathing has found a deep, steady rhythm, her body completely relaxed against the soft bedding. In this moment of perfect stillness, there is a sense of completion, not of her entire journey, which will continue beyond the boundaries of our story, but of this particular chapter in her extraordinary life. She has traversed the constructs of time, confronted unexpected challenges, and discovered new possibilities that will shape her path forward. The Chronos anchor around her neck continues its subtle pulsing, synchronizing gradually with her heartbeat until the two rhythms become indistinguishable from each other. This merging of personal and temporal energies creates a profound harmony, a perfect moment of integration between the individual and the vast flows of time that surround and permeate all existence. As we ourselves prepare to drift toward a sleep, we might imagine that same harmonious energy spreading through our own bodies, the gentle alignment of our personal rhythms with the deeper pulses of the universe. Our breathing naturally slows and deepens. Our muscles release any remaining tension, and our thoughts begin to quiet, becoming less insistent, less demanding of our attention. Like Thea, we too are travellers through time, moving moment by moment along our own unique paths. Though we may not possess the magical abilities of the Timekeeper's apprentice, we share with her the experience of being simultaneously within time and aware of it, capable of reflecting on its passage, of remembering what has been and anticipating what might come. This dual awareness is itself a kind of magic, a precious gift that allows us to find meaning in our journey, to connect moments into stories, to perceive patterns and possibilities that enrich our experience of being alive. As sleep draws nearer, we might let go of the need to understand everything, to solve every puzzle, to know with certainty what comes next. Like Thea, we can trust in the unfolding process, in the natural emergence of insight and direction that comes not through striving but through receptivity, not through control but through alignment. Time flows on, carrying us gently forward. The story continues to unfold, even as we rest and renew. Nothing is lost, nothing is wasted. Each moment contributes its essential note to the grand symphony of existence. Breathe deeply now, feeling the soft weight of relaxation spreading through your body. Notice how your awareness expands even as your thoughts grow quieter, how you can perceive more by trying less, how presence naturally deepens as effort diminishes. This is the paradox at the heart of our story, that the greatest wisdom comes not from imposing our will upon time, but from entering into partnership with it, not from forcing reality into our preferred shape, but from discerning and working with its inherent patterns. As Thea discovered, there is always a third path, a middle way that honours both human intention and the larger rhythms of existence. Finding this balance is the work of a lifetime, perhaps the work of many lifetimes. Yet each small step toward it brings its own reward of increased harmony and deeper peace. Rest now in that peace, in the quiet certainty that your journey, like Thea's, unfolds in perfect timing. The challenges you faced, the insights you've gained, the questions still seeking answers, all are woven into the tapestry of your unique path through time. Sleep approaches like a gentle wave, washing away the boundaries between conscious and unconscious awareness. Let yourself be carried by this wave, surrendering to its soothing motion, trusting in the renewal it brings. Like time itself, sleep heals, restores, and transforms, preparing us for whatever awaits when we once again open our eyes to a new day. Thea sleeps, and we sleep with her, connected across the imaginary boundaries of story and reality by the universal experience of surrendering to rest, of pausing the active quest in order to integrate what has been discovered, of allowing deeper wisdom to emerge from the quiet depths of being. Time flows on, and we flow with it, carried gently toward dreams, toward renewal, toward the endless unfolding of what has always been and what is forever becoming. Sleep well, fellow traveller. Sleep well. The first subtle light of pre-dawn begins to filter through the forest canopy, consciousness rises slowly, gently, like mist from the forest floor. As we hover in this in-between state, neither fully asleep nor completely awake, we might notice how the story we've shared continues to resonate within us. The images and ideas, the ancient forest, the curious dwelling, the gentle wisdom of Master Kronos, the determined seeking of his apprentice, have become part of our own inner landscape, enriching our experience of time and possibility. Perhaps we've absorbed something of Thea's patient attentiveness, her willingness to observe before acting, her careful discernment of which paths to follow and which to avoid. Perhaps we've recognised in ourselves both the conservative instinct of Master Kronos and the transformative impulse of Elara, the desire to preserve what is precious and the urge to improve what seems flawed. These qualities exist within each of us, balanced differently according to our unique temperaments and experiences. Our journey through life, like Thea's journey through time, involves finding our own middle path, our own way of being both responsive to what unfolds and responsible for the choices we make. As consciousness continues its gentle return, we might hold this understanding lightly, neither grasping at it nor pushing it away. Like the dew on the forest leaves, it is both present and ephemeral, both tangible and transforming. Our breathing remains deep and even, our bodies heavy with the profound relaxation of extended rest. There is no need to move yet, no reason to disturb this perfect stillness. We can remain in this liminal space between sleeping and waking for as long as feels right, absorbing the quiet wisdom that emerges in these threshold moments. The first birds have begun their morning songs, their voices clear and sweet in the still air. Each species has its distinctive call, yet together they create a harmonious chorus, much like the different time streams that Thea has learned to perceive, each with its unique qualities, yet all part of a greater whole. This is a time of integration, of allowing the insights and images from our shared journey to settle into their proper places within us. Nothing needs to be forced or hurried. Understanding unfolds according to its own natural timing, revealing itself in layers as we become ready to receive it. The light continues to strengthen, the sky transitioning from grey to pale gold as the sun approaches the horizon. Soon, full daylight will arrive, bringing with it the activities and responsibilities of waking life. But for now, we remain in this precious in-between time, held in the gentle embrace of half dream, half awareness. If sleep should return, we can welcome it, knowing that these cycles of consciousness and unconsciousness are themselves a kind of journey through time, a pattern of alternating states that has sustained life since its earliest beginnings. And if wakefulness continues to grow, we can greet it with the same accepting presence, the same patient attention that has guided us through our story. Either way, we carry with us the essence of what we've experienced, the wonder of exploring time's constructs, the challenge of balancing preservation and transformation, the deep peace that comes from aligning with the natural flow of existence. These gifts remain with us, enriching our journey forward in ways both subtle and profound. As daylight strengthens, we might begin to notice the details of our surroundings, the familiar shapes of our own sleeping space, the quality of light in our own morning, the sounds and scents that belong to our personal reality. We return gently from the realm of story to the world ever-unfolding mystery of time. The journey with Thea and Master Kronos concludes, yet our own journey continues. Moment by moment, breath by breath, choice by choice, we move forward with perhaps a bit more awareness of time's precious nature, a bit more appreciation for the delicate balance between accepting what is and creating what might be. This is the gift of story, not an escape from reality, but a deepening of our engagement with it. Not a distraction from our lives, but an enrichment of how we experience them. Like the Kronos anchor that guided Thea through the constructs of time, the story we've shared can serve as a touchstone, a reminder of deeper patterns and possibilities that we might otherwise overlook in the rush of daily concerns. As full wakefulness approaches, we might take a moment to express silent gratitude for rest, for renewal, for the endless unfolding of moments that constitutes our journey through time. Whatever the day brings, we meet it having been nourished by dreaming and story, by the deep relaxation of body and mind, by the quiet wisdom that emerges when we allow ourselves to simply be, with consciousness fully returned. We carry forward the peace and insight of our journey with the Timekeeper's Apprentice. The gentle lessons of time's flow remain with us, a soft reminder of how each moment connects to all others. The morning light grows warmer now, golden and inviting. Your body feels completely rested, deeply renewed through this time of peaceful sleep. Your mind carries the quiet wisdom that comes from true rest. The tension that once resided in your muscles has melted away completely. You might notice how time feels different in this moment, stretched and peaceful, unhurried and complete. This is the gift of deep relaxation, this altered perception of time's passage. You can return to this feeling whenever you need it. The journey through time's constructs has shown you that each moment contains infinite possibility. Each breath connects you to the endless flow of time. Each heartbeat marks your own personal rhythm within the greater symphony. Your breathing continues, slow and deep. Your body remains heavy and warm. Your mind rests in peaceful awareness. The story of the Timekeeper's Apprentice fades gently now, like stars disappearing into morning light. Yet the essence remains, the understanding that you too are a traveller through time, moving at your own perfect pace. Rest in this knowledge, rest in this peace, rest in this moment. Time holds you gently, sleep embraces you completely. You are exactly where you need to be, breathing softly, drifting peacefully, perfectly at rest. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the constructs of time. Sleep well, dear listener. Sleep well.